5, 6, 7, 8.
Hello EXers, welcome to the EX Podcast episode number 18. This is your host, Stefan Vincent. I've started this podcast because I believe that companies have to think of themselves as employment brands if they hope to attract and retain talent. The podcast brings a different lens to the employee experience, a brand and customer experience perspective rather than a traditional HR perspective. Our guests, all thought leaders and disruptors in the EX space in their own way, come to this show to debate, discuss, and share best practices on the key components that foster employee engagement and strengthen company culture, and also to spark the conversation on how to create positive employee experiences. Now, let's be real. Employee disengagement is a big issue. Only 30% of employees worldwide feel engaged at work, and 20% declare they just don't give a crap about their work. The other 50% are in the twilight zone of engagement, not fully engaged and not completely switched off either. Now, there's not much companies can do with the 20% paycheck suckers who just show up at work because they have to in order to collect their dues. Instead, companies should focus on the 50% of employees semi-engaged. That's where these companies can make a difference and impact the bottom line. Here, our guests share with you how we can make it happen together. Today's guest is Lisa Smith-Strother, Senior Director and Head of Global Employer Branding and Diversity at Ericsson Worldwide. Ericsson operates in 180 countries and counts more than 110,000 employees. Today with Lisa, we will talk about what Ericsson's global culture looks like, what challenges Lisa is facing in developing Ericsson's employer brands, and how she and her team address these challenges. What diversity means at Ericsson, and it means a lot of things. How new technologies impact talent acquisition, and how to measure the impact of the employee experience. This episode is brought to you by Fusion Alliance. Fusion Alliance delivers holistic solutions fusing together data, digital, and technology to redefine customer experiences and move your ideas to execution. That's why businesses across multiple industries have relied on Fusion's expertise and partnership for over 25 years. For more information, visit fusionalliance.com. I hope you enjoy this conversation. If you get a chance, please make sure to review the podcast on iTunes. You can open the iTunes app and type in Stefan Vincent or EX Podcast. And last thing, if you want to send me feedback, suggestions for future topics or guests, you can reach me at svincent@exsummit.com or on Twitter at ex_summit. All right, let's get to it. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the EX Podcast. Today's guest is Lisa Smith-Strother, Senior Director and Head of Global Employer Branding at Ericsson Worldwide. What's very interesting with Lisa is that her experiences covered consumer marketing, segmentation, ethnic marketing, and brand awareness before successfully moving to employer branding, candidate attraction, social and digital media. Lisa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be speaking with you. Great to have the opportunity.
For those who don't know you, tell us a bit more about your background and your current role at Ericsson.
Sure. Well, to start, I'm very passionate about marketing and employer branding, and I've been the Senior Director and Global Head of Employer and Diversity Branding at Ericsson for just a little over 3 years, well, actually maybe 3.5 years now. And I have the pleasure of setting Ericsson's global employer brand, the recruitment marketing strategy, and driving strategy across Ericsson's numerous social and digital careers channels, covering 180 countries, and we also have over 100,000 employees. And I lead a global team of talented persons that are equally passionate about marketing, diversity, and employer branding. So my background has been, as you've indicated, in the consumer marketing world for financial services, and I was doing that for over 15 years before moving into recruitment marketing and employer brand. And I started as a management trainee at a bank, and throughout my career, I was offered more senior marketing roles, and I moved on to American Express, NatWest Bank, and others. And honestly, with increasing responsibility, I was able to hone my marketing skill set, and I was working on various consumer marketing campaigns, direct marketing, and this is direct marketing, what I like to say back in the day when we were actually doing quite a bit of telemarketing as well, but branch branding, ethnic marketing, as I said, just in the financial services space. But then a little over 10 years ago, I transformed my marketing skill set into the employer brand and recruitment marketing landscape in two different industries. So it started out in pharma, and that certainly was an adjustment, just as far as to get comfortable with the science discussions. And now I'm in what I would consider to be an incredibly fast-paced but equally exciting field of telco or ICT, also known as information communications and technology. So what I found is whether I was targeting an affluent segment for an investment or home equity product, which we were doing quite a bit of at the time, or trying to recruit a chemist or a software engineer, I found the marketing and selection strategy basics are the same when you're talking about demographics, and at that time having the benefit of psychographic data. And we did quite a bit with establishing response scores, because at that point you had a great deal of access with the credit bureau information.
So let's get a bit deeper into this. What skills did you develop in your past consumer marketing roles that you were able to transfer to the employer branding side?
I would say, honestly, the basics of marketing and segmentation, the importance of positioning, and ensuring your message resonates and attracts the right segment or target. And there's a lot of talk now about storytelling, but effective and emotive storytelling in direct marketing was important years ago. Again, if you think back to direct mail letters and what was referred to as the Johnson box, and how people read copy, and how you should make it emotive and really inviting for them. It's very similar today. Also, how you need to have a broad and diverse audience for focus groups and a broad audience for targeting. The importance of crafting a message framework across segments, knowing the market dynamics and climate, along with the competitor's voice, and the value of featuring, again, diverse principles and having that diverse message, and the significance of content curation and owning your brand while protecting your brand. So quite a bit, actually.
And segmentation is a basic concept on the consumer marketing side, but not many companies apply it to the employee side. And why is that?
I think, although I can certainly see individuals and the industry maturing very quickly, and you can see certain practices just burgeoning in their use, but it's probably a matter of comfort and familiarity. Although when you think of segmentation on the consumer side, again, you're looking at whether it's the demographic data, the psychographic data, whether it's their media usages, their behaviors, things like that. On the recruitment side, we've been doing segmentation even as it relates to what skill sets do we want to target, what messages would best resonate with them, what generations are we really looking to target, and what messages would be appropriate for them. And so I would say that it clearly is being a lot more, it's evolving, I'll put it that way.
And do you think it's also due to the fact that there are not many marketing people into the talent acquisition, recruiting, or HR business? And so those people actually don't have a marketing background, don't really understand or even appreciate the being people-centered, doing some, not only looking at data, but ethnographic research, empathy, segmentation. Do you feel it's one of the reasons why?
Yeah, I do think that could be certainly the case. I know when I left the traditional marketing space on the financial service side, and this was when I went to the AstraZeneca actually, and the person was saying that they weren't looking for someone that had HR experience, because I was, very transparent, saying I have never done anything HR related,
Right.
certainly not within recruitment, but crediting the recruiter, she was saying that she was looking for someone who had the marketing expertise and the skill set, because they wanted someone in that space for that purpose. So I think you're right, as far as there is a bit of a shortage of traditional marketing in the space, but I can see that that's changing, just with the recognition of how important the employer brand is to the corporate brand.
I would agree with you. Now let's talk a bit more specifically about Ericsson. The company operates in about 180 countries.
That's correct.
What does the Ericsson culture look like, and is it consistent across all countries?
Well, first and foremost, our culture addresses the fact that we're global, that we have a significant impact relative to our sustainability and our technology for good programs. In addition to that, you have the ability to really sort of navigate and set your career, I would say, because of the various projects that individuals have to work on. Now, if you're going to say, is it consistent? So the way we've developed our architecture is we stay focused on the global, the broad impact, the ability for you to be a change maker and a challenger as well. I mean, we value that character, if you will. But within certain countries, right, if they are fortunate enough to win a significant amount of awards, meaning a best place to work, or relative to, say, HR or recruitment or R&D, then we certainly will dial up, if you will, those particular attraction drivers for those countries or that market area or region. But overall, from an employer brand perspective, regardless of what country you're from, we really try to hone in on the global, the impact, the challenger, the fact of the change maker, and as I said before, our sustainability and all the technology for good activities that we're very much involved in. And then, of course, we are mindful of what attraction drivers across different countries, how they're weighted. So we'll know that a work-life balance or career development or compensation might score very highly in some countries, whereas access to managers and a challenging environment and flexibility might score high in others. So we also try to integrate that in our messaging when we are not just global, but look to have a local appeal and reference.
I see. Ericsson is a Swedish company, and Sweden is pretty innovative when it comes to employee experience. Have you seen differences based on your experience between traditional U.S. companies and a company like Ericsson from Europe and mostly from Scandinavia?
I would say, Ericsson certainly has been, in my experience, highly collaborative, incredibly supportive, and eager to allow you, as I said before, to chart your path. Now, it also expects you to take some initiative and to recognize that you have to be adaptable and embrace change pretty regularly. But certainly if you demonstrate that capability and are eager to learn, and as I said before, willing to work within teams and to be highly collaborative and nearly entrepreneurial in your thought and actions, then I think you will do exceptionally well. So if you were going to ask how would I compare that to some of my experiences in the banking arena, so frankly, in the banking arena, it is incredibly more structured, and I would say regulation has a great impact on that. And so by being structured, then you have pretty strict guidelines and processes in place, again, because of the regulations and the associated risk with that, right? But my experience, and even on the financial service side, has been one of a flexible environment, highly collaborative, and I think that's because if you're in frankly, if you're in a marketing space, then that allows you to be highly collaborative and creative and innovative and rely on your coworkers to work together. So I think it's been perhaps not a difficult transition for me.
And Ericsson is not a young company. They've been around for about 100 years or so, I believe.
Actually, over 140 years.
In 40 years. Wow.
We truly have a deep and rich history and legacy. And we actually were the developers of Bluetooth as well as the language for Facebook. We developed networks deep in the Amazon, throughout the megacities. If you've used your cell phone, which I'm sure you've had, you've most likely used an Ericsson network, because 40% of the traffic will go through an Ericsson network. So we have a significant number of subscribers. I think the last count was over 2.5 billion, and quite a large footprint.
Very impressive. So given the age of the company, what challenges are you facing in your role developing Ericsson's employer brands?
I mean, one of the challenges, and I would say that most companies that are older than 100 years, it's how you stay fresh and new and attractive, particularly for millennials, right? So it's just, even though I believe Ericsson is a great place to work, we're incredibly innovative and have a great deal of exciting and cool things going on. If you were just to go onto our career site, you can see all of that, or the corporate site, and you can see a lot of things that are in play in our what's referred to as the Ericsson Garage in our studio. But the point is how do you package that and position that for a younger demographic, a millennial? How do you keep Ericsson fresh and engaged across social and digital media? So there are a variety of things that we've been doing in order to make that happen. But I would say that if you are looking at a Google or a Facebook, a lot of times it can be a challenge. And if you were to talk to General Electric or some of the older companies as well, they would have similar issues in trying to overcome that.
Yeah, I was about actually to talk about the example of GE. Was it last year, a couple of years ago, they started running ads on TV to the fact that GE was now a technology company, no longer an appliance company. So right. Have you done similar things at Ericsson in terms of ads to shift the perception of candidates towards the company?
I think so, and I would say that some of the and it's interesting, and I know I mentioned GE, but when they were talking about migrating from an appliance to technology, Ericsson has been again in technology for tens of years as well, or decades rather. But what I was getting at is some of the things that we've done in order to break away from the clutter, if you will, is we've done some mobile billboard ads, which is what you wouldn't typically expect a recruitment marketing advert to be. And part of the campaign was to literally map out where our competitors are first, create a mobile billboard, drive very strategically and around the neighborhood, if you will, of our competitors, and just pause there long enough to have some supporting social media campaigns running and trying to engage people out there so that they could be aware of our billboard. So that was a little different, because we did get some feedback that you wouldn't expect that. We've done some ads on Twitter during TV shows where we wanted to be aligned with certain shows that depicted whether you were a software engineer, which are key roles that we're looking to recruit, or a developer, another key role we're trying to recruit, so that we inserted ourselves in the feed of the Twitter while the TV show was going on. That was a little different. We've done karaoke on Facebook Live in an effort to show the softer side, to engage and attract individuals to our platform so that they could learn more. We have do the Instagram takeovers so that employees can give a really good understanding of what they do at work and also what they do before and after work, so that people can see what their life is in that space. And then from a diversity perspective, we've done quite a bit. So whether it's to highlight our support of International Women's Day, Girls in ICT, it's Differently Able Day or World Day for Disability Day, Diversity Awareness Month. So we typically make sure that our employees are featured in a very ambitious and aggressive way, and have them really speak and talk about their experiences so that they can reveal what's going on at Ericsson and what they're doing in their role to attract other individuals. And we also have, keeping the employee advocacy thought in mind, we also have a social advocacy tool which enables our employees to basically share content that's branded about Ericsson across their personal and professional networks. But in addition to that, they're able to share third-party content, which allows them to advance their personal brand as well as the professional brand in the same time as amplifying Ericsson's brand. So this allows us to promote Ericsson across many channels, and in a similar way in doing programmatic marketing, that we're really sort of following people's behaviors so that we can insert Ericsson into, across those channels as well and multiple devices.
So what's the role of data in your role when you define strategies to engage with talents in general, and then when you start implementing tactical initiatives? So
from a data perspective, I mean, certainly we capture all areas of engagement across our social and digital channels. So if I'm following the question correctly. So we're really keen to make sure that we know what pages are engaging the most, what content is engaging the most, what's being shared the most, what's most effective, if it's a content versus a picture versus a video. In addition to that, we also are really keen on how information is being shared, and also even from a social advocacy perspective, what content within our employees is being shared and most effective, so that we can refine and make adjustments so that when we create content and set up our campaigns, that it's reflecting our lessons learned. So data does play a significant part in that, because we're regularly looking at trends and looking at I'll say lifts as well as drops to see what has contributed to that. We also regularly monitor the sentiment, and as we are doing different campaigns, we make sure that we are looking at certain words within the sentiment, because again, that's really crucial when we set up our campaigns. And even when you're talking about setting up certain types of conversions, we're mindful as far as to get that set up so that we can see if it's effective and how we need to adjust it accordingly.
So is it right to assume that basically you just apply marketing principles to the employee and recruiting side when you talk about connecting and integrating social media platforms with the ATS and maybe a sort of CRM where you record all your employee data and candidate data? Is it safe to assume that? That
is true. It's ideal to have interfaces across all of them, so you can see the pull through and the whole journey, as well as the attribution. Because I believe statistics have shown that years ago it used to be that people needed to be touched 3 or 4 times. Most recently, I heard 10 or 11 or 12 times before they really will decide to act on that, just because they're getting bombarded with so much news and as well as so many different options. So yes, that is correct. So the CRM certainly plays a part of that. Establishing the talent community is a key part of that as well. Ensuring that you're keeping the persons that are in the CRM warm and engaged by sending out monthly emails and perhaps quarterly newsletters. That's all, critical to us.
And what is the role and the place of technology and automation in talent acquisition? I was recently talking to a gentleman named Rod Wagner. He wrote a book on the 12 new rules for managing your employees as if they were real people. And he was talking about the fact that in one company, an HR executive applied for his own role to see if the system or the process was broken, and he was not even selected by robots when he submitted his application for his own role. So, which is very interesting, and it sounds like even though we do a lot of automation now on the talent acquisition and recruiting side to be able to filter thousands of applications, it sounds like sometimes robots and automation miss some of the human understanding and connection of different profiles or different backgrounds. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I would agree with that. I would say that there are many tools out there now that are hoping and that are trying to address that. So whether it's like a hired score, I don't know if you're familiar with that, where they apply a score based on your propensity to meet the requirements, and there are others as well. But I agree, it's not a perfect science. When you're talking about chat bots, there was an interesting discussion, I believe, on the podcast Marketing Over Coffee, and they were talking about how an individual was trying to order flowers using a chat bot, and the chat bot kept trying to tell him to get a different type of flower, even though he had selected one that he thought would be, what he was really looking to send. So I think that, that continues to be a work in progress. But I believe that chat bots will be significantly beneficial over time for recruitment. So whether you load them up with frequently asked questions and then set it up so they can continually learn and start to anticipate, or whether you use AI devices that are in the marketplace right now, I think that over time you're going to see more and more of that, and that they will be refined and improved.
And as you alluded to it, the employee experience, in my mind, is really about experimenting and iterating. Now, there isn't one solution that fits all or one definite answer. What have you learned the hard way that forced you to rethink how you approach employer branding?
I would say that one of the key ones I've learned is you don't want to assume, because you might assume that a particular segment might respond to a particular message as far as how you position it, and that might not be the case. So as I said, when we did some testing with Twitter TV ads, we thought a particular audience would appeal to this one message for this one show, and it was a bit lackluster. So, it helped us learn to maybe insert ourselves differently in the post alongside with the storyline. Other things that we've learned, I would say, have to do with although we, frankly, I already knew this, but it sort of validated that you need to make sure that you have diverse individuals throughout all of your adverts. So if you're talking to potential candidates in India, then you should show images of Indians, and the same thing in Africa. So it's an obvious observation, but if you might think that you could tweak and adjust it, and it just does not work that way. And another one I would say is just sort of gamifications or quizzes. We have a number of quizzes on our career site, and in an effort to engage and attract a certain audience, we would set up these quizzes and look for certain types of individuals to really get in there and spend a lot of time on it. But then we found that another demographic entirely really responded well to it. And then lastly, some of the things that we post on our site having to do with whether it's Shark Week or whether it's related to something pertaining to Star Wars. My point is that it's still people oriented, and it's fun and engaging, and it works. It doesn't always have to be about recruitment.
Yeah, it's a good point. Now, one of your areas of focus is diversity. So what does diversity mean to Ericsson, and what does the company do to diversify its workforce?
So Ericsson looks at, as a global company, of course, so Ericsson looks at diversity as, in addition to nationality and ethnicity and gender, we're also looking at experiences, the way of thinking, lifestyle, where you're located. So it's quite broad to ensure that we are attracting and engaging a broad audience. So by 2020, we have said on many occasions that we want our employees to be represented by 30% of them to be women. So you will see across the various campaigns that we've been running for some time now that we talk about gender in a very intentional way, that we are conscious to ensure that we have women across all of our campaigns. But generally, when we talk about diversity, it is quite broad globally.
So when you talk about the place and the ratio of women in the workforce, again, not to stereotype, but typically in Scandinavian countries, women have a more prominent place in the society than in many other countries. So how does it play out at Ericsson? Is it part of the company's DNA to be from Sweden and have that sort of natural tendency to empower women more than maybe other countries?
Well, I've been fortunate to work at companies that were quite keen to ensure that women were empowered and encouraged and mentored in order to exceed and perform well, and then ultimately be promoted and fulfill senior roles. And that, frankly, is a similar stance here at Ericsson. So yes, women are very much empowered. Various mentor programs in play. We have certainly a high performer audience. We have various programs for women, guest speakers to come in. We actively attend the Grace Hopper Conference as well as Watermark. We've had speakers from Watermark come in. We've attended the Watermark Conference, participated in the Watermark Conference, whether for a keynote or panel speakers. So the environment at Ericsson fosters women being recognized, being supported, and being promoted and represented across all levels. Now, does that mean that there isn't room for improvement? Absolutely, and we are doing various things, a lot that I've mentioned, in order to make that happen. And even from a recruiting perspective, within recruitment marketing, diversity is tightly bound to the employer brand message. As I said before, we actively run campaigns for whether it's International Women's Day, Girls in ICT, all of those diversity-oriented events talk to the benefit of having a diverse workforce, as well as to Ericsson's commitment to having a diverse workforce. workforce. I mean, we're really intentional about ensuring our employer brand messages feature Ericsson's diverse employees across the globe, as well as their vast experiences. We have various digital activations, whether it's our diversity wall on our career site, where you can see a number of our employees featured and where they're just speaking openly about their experiences at Ericsson. And we find when our messages incorporate diversity, the results offer and yield higher engagement overall. And we've been rewarded with employer brand diversity awards where our campaigns have been referenced that feature diversity.
Do you focus on diversity in some countries versus others where there's either a higher demands on the candidate or prospect side, or is it just for cultural matters?
Well, we universally or globally, we focus on diversity in every country. Now, some of the messages relative to diversity, whether it's gender, it's always the sort of the broad experience and skill set and education, and it's that. But depending upon what country it is, will determine what our diversity message is relative to lifestyle and sexual orientation. But overall, we consistently talk about and push diversity across all countries, and everyone is keen in order to support that, even as it relates to, I think where you employee referral. I don't know if you were referencing that, and in addition to that, even as it relates to recruitment, our recruiters have gone through a diversity and inclusion training. There's been quite a few unconscious bias sessions that have gone on throughout the organization, and that's a regular part of our DNA to ensure that people are sensitive and aware about the importance of recruiting a diverse audience, diverse talent, skill set.
Could you share with our audience some of Ericsson's employer brand's attributes and maybe its employee value proposition?
Sure. So we start off with our promise. So if you think about an employer brand architecture, you want to start off with your promise. So the promise that we have for our employees you've heard me mention about the global aspect as far as Ericsson being a global company and letting people know that upon working at Ericsson, they'll have the opportunity to talk with people and have colleagues across the globe. In addition to that, it's the fact of the impact that you'll have pretty quickly as well. So the impact with the projects, when you think about Ericsson's role in the world and what we do. And so we talk a great deal about sort of the depth and the breadth of the projects and the impact that we have. And then whether it's however you want to characterize it as being a change maker or a challenger, we encourage employees to challenge what they hear and in an effort for them to contribute in an intentional way based on what they're learning and what their experiences have been. So we often talk about the fact that you can, as I said before, be a change maker here based on the skill set and the knowledge that you're bringing to Ericsson. So those are sort of the key promises that we talk about. And then lastly, it's the human aspect. And the human aspect talks about diversity, our commitment and value of diversity, the fact that we are thoughtful of each other. There's an expectation of respect and professionalism when you're engaging with colleagues. And then beyond that, with the promises, then there are behaviors of success that we expect. So we certainly look for individuals to be, as I said before, professional. We expect them to be persistent, and we also look for them to be, as I said before, respectful as well. And then if you were to ask what are some of our differentiators, we see that our technology for good, our sustainability, are big differentiators. If you were to look at what our commitment has been with Connect for Learn, with ensuring the number of schools that we've impacted across the country, the Ericsson response that we do, so that if there has been any type of disaster. We're right there to try to connect people and to provide a system as fast as we can. In addition to that, we also see our many awards as differentiators, and then certainly the culture of the collaboration and the team spirit and the innovation. I mean, as I said before, we have been quite involved in developing, whether it was Bluetooth or the language of Facebook, over 39 patents, and discovering and designing and delivering even as we speak. So those are the things that we sort of really focus on. And then our brand statement, what I like to say, how we bring it all together, is the U plus Ericsson. And the U plus Ericsson is our statement that really conveys what the appreciable value is of people coming to Ericsson. So how they are helping us deliver, how are they helping us craft our voice by virtue of the importance of employees to the employer brand, and just how they're contributing to the end result for us to be a better company.
Okay, that's very good. Could you share with our listeners maybe 2 or 3 best practices around designing a talent acquisition strategy and employer branding, maybe at a high level? What are the maybe 2, 3 first things that companies would have to consider when they're talking about developing a TA strategy and developing an employer brand?
I mean, I would say that, well, first and foremost, I think you need senior leaders' buy-in. I think that's so critically important, because if they understand the importance of an employer brand, that goes a long way. And I'm fortunate by saying Ericsson certainly sees the value. But I think social and digital media are key to advancing and amplifying your brand and showcasing your employees, because keep in mind, your employees are the voice of your brand. So you really want to have them have a platform. And if the significance of that relative to employee engagement goes a long way, because there are some statistics that show that could impact employee engagement upwards of, I think, 54% is what I read recently. And and again, that also includes the blog, Instagram takeovers, the Facebook Live, getting quotes, just to ensure that the message is authentic. I don't think you can overlook employer referral, especially with some form of social sharing. And I think we've already talked about just the value of diversity and how it's so tightly bound to employer brand. So I think you need to ensure that that's part of the framework. I believe we also talked about having employees serve as brand and social advocates. So it's great if you can integrate a social advocacy program where they can share that content. And also important, which probably, maybe I should have said this first, is having a mobile-enabled career site that offers a near delightful visitor experience, including an ease in job search. So obviously we've heard quite a bit about Google job search, but it's generating a lot of buzz. But you want to keep your career site fresh, as it serves as the anchor of your employer brand message. It offers that really sort of sticky experience, right? If you have really strong content there.
Yeah.
And
go ahead. We talk a lot about UX, user experience on the customer side, and how it should be seamless experience from one device to another, et cetera, et cetera. But many companies don't really apply UX principles again on the application, candidate application side. Sometimes, a simple example is why a candidate could actually upload his or her resume to, let's say, JobVite's application form, and then would have to fill out pages of different fields with the same information that is on the resume. It's kind of a very bad user experience. So how does Ericsson face those type of things, or have you done something about ease the candidate experience in terms of having a better user experience when it comes to application or submission?
Well, candidates can certainly upload or upload their LinkedIn upon applying.
Yeah.
So that can make it more expedient. So that is one process, and there are other processes, currently under consideration as far as how we can even improve that further. But I think certainly the LinkedIn integration will make the candidate, make the experience a bit less onerous of having to re-enter information.
Now, a big question around the employee experience, and mostly from an executive perspective, is, okay, yeah, it's nice to talk about the employee experience, but what is really the impact on my business as a CEO? So the measurements of the EX is still, well, there's still a lot of questions about how do you measure the effectiveness and the impact on implementing an employee experience strategy as a whole. Do you have any examples of this at Ericsson? On how do you measure?
If I can tell you it sort of somewhat indirectly. So, certainly there are a number of surveys, right, that can be conducted.
Yes.
Once the candidate becomes during their interview, you can certainly conduct a survey. You can ask key questions, but you don't want to make it too onerous or excessive. You can also certainly gather a lot of insight and intelligence from sites such as Glassdoor and other community sites, and then you can compile those findings and get a good feel for what their experience was. In addition to that, when you're talking about candidates, I think you also need to think of how you can protect your brand. So whether the candidate was successful or not, we have a platform titled Your Next Step. So if the candidate isn't successful, when we send their decline letter, they are provided a link to our branded platform with training toward improving their CV, helping them with their communication skills and interviewing, even instruction on building or enhancing their personal brand. So even though they aren't selected, they have free access to a learning platform to ultimately improve their marketability and employability. And this shows our interest in them getting hired. And it also generates goodwill among them as well as Ericsson, and it helps Ericsson protect, our brand. So I think people or companies probably should be thinking about that as well, just given the competitiveness in the market. But going back to, how you can measure this, when you think about Your Next Step, we have done surveys for this audience to gain a better understanding of how they are assessing the value of this tool. As I said before, there are a number of survey tools you can run. And I think tool or platforms such as Glassdoor will give you insight into what the experience is with your company.
Yeah, what you were saying about sort of not stopping the communication if there's no immediate conversion, meaning candidates getting an interview and potentially getting hired, because often companies just overlook this completely. While they do this again on the customer side, where they still engage and nurture those leads over a long period of time, not so much on the candidate side. So it's very interesting to hear that Ericsson has put in place that sort of process to keep the communication going, even though at the first time a candidate application may not transfer into even an interview, if not employment.
Yeah, I mean, it's about protecting your brand and also providing that service.
Very, very, very interesting. Now, we're getting close towards the end of the discussion, but at this point in time, I'd like to ask a more personal question so that our audience get to know our guests a bit more intimately. Mm-hmm. So if you were to invite a historical figure to dinner, who would you choose and why?
That is a tough question, but I would say, frankly, there were two. So the first one would be, I would say Shirley Chisholm. So I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she was the first African-American woman to run for president in the 70s. And she was an incredible speaker, had just amazing tenacity and forthrightness, and has been hurled quite a bit by the likes of Hillary Clinton and others. But in addition to that, I would say Michelle Obama. I think she, too, is an amazing figure, always looking to provide a positive message. And I think she's incredibly smart and has been overcome quite a bit despite her sort of childhood circumstances. So, and I think she's a wonderful mom. So it would be Michelle Obama.
Very good. What's the essential item you always take with you on vacation?
So there were two items. It's my Kindle and my Amazon Echo Dot. I love to read, and I like to keep up with my podcast and other skills that you can download on your Amazon Echo Dot. And I just like the sort of the pre-AI experience because I know it's still pretty early. And you may already know this, but we launched a skill on the Amazon Echo platform, and they have over 10,000 skills, and ours was listed as the top skill on VentureBeat, or at least the top 5, and it's titled Ericsson Female Innovators Trivia. And we launched it to showcase our commitment to women empowerment and women in tech. But I like to keep up on my podcast, and I love to read, so it would be my Kindle and my Amazon Echo Dot.
What excites you the most when you go to work every day?
I would say that just the global aspect of my role. I love being able to talk and interact with people across the globe. I enjoy seeing the results of our campaigns, applying the learnings, trying new campaign tactics, and, just being creative. And I said before, I'm really fortunate. I have a wonderful, talented team, and we have a great camaraderie. So I look forward to engaging with them.
Do you speak other languages?
I do not.
You do not. You only speak English with your fellow or counterparts from other affiliate offices?
Yes, I do, and you're making me feel rather...
No. So it was not a requirement to learn Swedish to join Ericsson?
Well, you know what? I did buy the book and downloaded the app, but I haven't made much progress on it. So,
have you been to Sweden?
Oh, several times. Yes.
Where is Ericsson located in Sweden? Is it Stockholm or is it somewhere else?
It's actually Kista, which is outside of Stockholm.
Okay. And final question: what is your favorite food?
I would say anything grilled, especially vegetables and fish. And, like many of us, I try to eat healthy, and I do really enjoy them. And it also reminds me of fun family backyard cookouts. And, when you think about the grill. So that would be my answer.
Good. Well, from what you said earlier, there seems to have a plethora of information on Ericsson's website as far as the employer brands, what the culture is like to work at Ericsson. So what are the ways for our listeners to follow you and Ericsson on social media beyond the website?
Correct. So if they were to go to Ericsson Careers, and they could find that from Ericsson.com, once they're there, they can see the various channels that we have across social media. So whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, obviously we have a page on LinkedIn. Snapchat. We also have a Snapchat. I just would encourage them to follow us and to start engaging. And where they can reach out to me personally is on LinkedIn.
Good. Well, I know you have a very busy day, so I really thank you for your time today and your candor speaking about Ericsson. It's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it. And you threw me some curveballs with the questions. So thank you for forcing me to think on my feet. Thanks for tuning in to the EX Podcast. If you want to learn more, visit our website at expodcast.com. If you want to find out more about our next conferences, go to exsummit.com. Finally, you can also find my manifesto on business to employee or B2E branding at b2ebranding.co. See you next week.